Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Season 7, Episode 13, overall 343 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. Good morning, everybody, on this, I can't believe it's Monday, December 11th, 2023, and I'm looking forward to my guest today. This will be his first appearance on my show, and hopefully more in the future, and his name is Geoffrey Brandow. He is currently the play-by-play announcer for the Guelph Gryphons men's and women's hockey and basketball teams, and he's also an unaffiliated Canadian Hockey League stats guy. So if you want to know anything about the CHL or the OHL or the leagues in Canada, Geoffrey's your man. So I'm looking forward to having Geoffrey on today and talk some Guelph Gryphons hockey and basketball, and some Canadian Hockey League as well. Good morning, Geoffrey. How you doing?
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate this.
Oh, listen, we've been talking about trying to do this for the longest time. We were finally able to get our schedules together at the same time. So, luckily during this OUA break, we can finally get together, sit down, and let's talk a little bit of men's and women's hockey, men's and women's basketball from a Canadian university perspective.
Yes, and the hockey guys don't start back up until I think January 5th. Their next home game against is the York Lions, and then I think the women are home on January 11th against Brock.
Yeah, the men start right away. 5th day into January. Women actually get to start on the road. They get a rematch against Ontario Tech, and then a matchup with the Queen's University Gales, and then they're back home, as mentioned, on the 11th against the Badgers.
The women's hockey team has been outstanding this year, and I think they're a better team than they were last year.
Oh, they absolutely are. There's a little bit more offense. Tori Verbeek, Hannah Tate, Damian McGoffin have all seemed to take the games to a next level. Tori led the team last year with just 10 goals. Guelph already has 39 as a team this year. They'll probably finish somewhere in the 80s, most likely. Especially with some weaker competition. They've already got Toronto out of the way. They've got one more game against Nipissing. It's going to be really, really fun to see where they're at. And it also looks like the secondary scoring start to come. At one point, that top line had over 30% of the team's points, and now they're at, just over 20%, just simply because of that secondary scoring that they really desperately needed.
And Fidel in net, I think she's the best goalie in women's hockey, in university hockey.
She might as well be. She might very well be. Nobody is better than her across the entire U Sports and goals against average and save percentage. She had an off night in her last game against York where she allowed 3 goals, which was exceptionally weird for her. She's only allowed two or more one previous time this year. So I think in 12 starts, 13 starts, she's allowed 1 goal or less, including a shutout streak that lasted over 240 minutes. I mean, she was absolutely sensational. I still want to sit her down one time and ask her about her goaltending philosophy. Martina Fidel hails from Trento, Italy, which is in the northern part of the country. Her family bounced around a lot, went to Slovenia. Her father went to Slovenia to work there. Then she ended up in Sweden, joined the J1 league in the Brinkens, and then eventually ended up here as a animal biology student here at the University of Guelph, and she's been nothing but sensational. 4 shutouts in her first year, 6 shutouts in her second year, already 4 shutouts this year. She might, Valerie Lamenta is undoubtedly the best goaltender in the history of the University of Guelph Gryphons, but Martina Fidel is nipping right on her heels right quick.
Hey Jeffrey, before we get to some questions, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this new women's professional hockey league, and what do you think of it, and do you think long term this can be successful?
The answer is I like it and I love it, but I'm not sure what the sustained. Nobody's ever come out really and said what sustained success is going to be for the league. Is it going to be payment for every player? Well, it's going to be payment for every player, but a $5 million salary cap, a 10 million, 15, 20. Nobody's really come out and said it. I've heard somebody say that they're expecting to operate as a loss in this first season. And the danger with it is that it's only 6 teams. Only 6 teams, but there's not a lot of playing time or playing schedule. I think only 54 games are scheduled this year. It all depends on what time these games are being played at. It, it's to think of it in a sort of a WNBA standard. You're still fighting against the problem with their final is it's right up against the World Series, or at least an ALCS or an NLCS championship series. So most of the eyes for those games are going to go to the baseball games, whether as opposed to the basketball game, which is defending its championship. So 700,000 people watch which was an all-time high, or at least a high in the last 20 years, I think it was. But you're still not reaching that million audience that the baseball stuff is getting. So back to the PWHL, do I think it'll work? Absolutely. I'm just still not certain what the end game is.
And Jeffrey, anytime you start a new pro sports league, this is just my opinion. I feel it takes at least 5 years to see progress. And obviously, you don't want to start with too many teams because you want to make sure the original teams that are in the league are strong before expanding.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I'm probably on that same level. Let's see where they are in 5 years, and then we can attach from there, expand, whatever it may be. I don't think the league will ever contract. I don't think the league will ever fold. But I'm just, I want it to work so much, just simply because it's women's sports and we can add another sport to it. I will never understand the knuckle dragging troglodytes that believe women's sports is not a sport, but that's just me. But there's always there's just a little part of me that says I don't know. Again, we've talked about this with our mutual friend Mateo. You put Team Canada and Team USA in the gold medal game, and everybody's going to watch at the Olympics. You make them Team Red versus Team Blue. I'm not sure you're going to get that type of response, and that's what I'm kind of worried about with the PWHL.
Well, fingers crossed. Hey, since I've been doing Gryph Vision the last year and a half, I've done a lot of games as a camera operator, and I really enjoy women's hockey, and I think it's come a long ways, in my opinion.
Well, it absolutely has. I mean, it's been over 30 years since the women first had a women's world championship. So, you go from the days of Cassie Campbell now to Colleen Historics and to Haley Wickenheiser as a forward and Murray Fleet Plan, and then you bring in all the people from the States, whether Terry Hyde or Lamoureux twins or Amanda Kessel, and now Venla Hovey out of Finland, and the young woman's defenseman, can't remember her name, Jenny Hirikoski. She's a phenomenal player. The worldwide grasp of it. The more people we can get into it, the more players we can get into it, the better it's going to become. And it's going to have to be a collective effort on all of our parts.
Absolutely. Hey, Jeffrey, I'm going to get into some questions right now. Can you tell my audience a little bit about yourself, and when did you decide you to pursue a career as a play-by-play announcer?
Describing myself is probably the hardest thing that I can do because I don't really know if there is a way to describe myself. I'm a simpleton at best. I love sports. I love hockey. I love calling sports. I've had this question a few times this year of when I started wanting to be a play-by-play broadcaster. And truthfully, it was basically still when I was almost in diapers. I would listen to Bob Cole on Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night with on the CBC watching Leafs games, and John Harriet all the time. Seemingly, Harriet never could say he was always juggle. But yeah, and since then, I've always sort of wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster. Living here in Guelph, there isn't that many opportunities to become one. It's funny because the former New York Rangers radio voice, Norm Jerry, is our former mayor.
Yep.
So we have him, and Larry Malott has been around for years, decades with the Guelph Storm, and even prior to that, the Holiday Platers, and even before that, the CMCs. And so we have an intercounty baseball team, a semi-pro baseball team. We have all these other different sports, but we've never really had the opportunity. Now we do. We're in 2023. Everything is digitalized now. Everything is on the internet. And so now you can get out and do it. I joined Rogers TV as a volunteer in 2000, wanting to be the first play-by-play voice of the Guelph Storm. I thought that would be a great foot in the door. I'd get 4 or 5 years in um, of experience before moving on. Having enough to build a demo reel and finally getting to be able to get out in the world and practice and get a real life job. But unfortunately, it was taken over, and the same guy held on the position for 23 years. So there's nothing much you can do about it.
It's not an easy industry to break into, but as long as you have the passion and you're willing to work and learn, like I said, and for me, this live streaming has given me opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten without this technology.
Mm. And that's another thing too, is that I've had so many arguments with family members, with friends, is that I just couldn't give up on the dream. No matter what it was, hey, you got to get another job. Hey, you got to do this. Hey, you got to do that. I couldn't do it. I can't give up on this dream. I know how to do one thing in life, and that's call sporting events. That's pretty much all I can do and be really, really good at it. So, and as we mentioned, the internet has sort of opened our eyes to literally a brand new world of technology and internet, and we can all put our voices out there to anything we want it, really. And so it's a lot easier for us to get that opportunity to call hockey games, baseball games, whatever it is, have an interview show, have your very own podcast. That it sets ourselves apart from somebody else. And that's what that's supposed to do. That's what social media is supposed to do.
And what I love about this is on a radio station in Georgia, so I can do my own radio shows from my own home as well. But Jeffrey, one thing I wanted to say too is whatever you're doing in whatever career you're doing, this goes from radio or media or whatever, is be consistent and be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not.
Oh, I completely agree with that. Just had a conversation with our mutual friend again, Ryan Drury, the now play-by-play TV voice of the Guelph Storm, and he was mentioning that he just wants to go in and do the job every night, be himself. Same with Mark Perry, his color commentator, or color or analyst now, I guess we call them. And the more you get the chance to experience your own personality, I think that's another thing too, is that play-by-play broadcasters, because we talk so much, that if we're a little bit monotonic or we're a little bit too by the line, we're not able to express ourselves, and we're not able to be who we should be and express our I don't want to say condolences, because that's not the right word, but express, we need to be expressive, and some people can do it, some people can't.
Besides Bob Cole, who else were some other broadcasters, both in radio and TV, that you liked when you were growing up?
Well, I think the big one for me is Doc Emmerich. I think you can tell that by my game call. It's a very fast, furious game call with different verbiage, as much different verbiage as I can get in. I realized along the way when I was practicing that there's only so many ways you can say the word pass. Player X passes to player Y, player Y passes to player Z, player Z passes to player A. But when you go and you say player X hands this off to player Y to player Z, player Z distributes to player A circulates to player B, assigns to player C. All these words that make it better, make English just a little bit better for us to use. It's a very high standard for me. Also in time, 4 3/4 in a period, 4.5, 4 1/4 in a period, instead of 4:15 or 4:20 or whatever it may be. Um, a lot of the guys, Chris Cuthbert again, one. CC's been doing it for quite a long time now, and you know, obviously there's a reason why he's been able to be at the top of the game. There's a reason why he got to call the 2010 Olympic final with the golden goal call from Sidney Crosby's stick. But yeah, there's been quite a few, especially those guys. Actually, a guy who I really like now is a British soccer commentator, Peter Drury. I think he's the best play-by-play guy in all of professional sports. The way he can build a story, and the way he can um, talk about, even after a goal call, he, he always seems to find the right words, the right way to describe how the game was going or how the goal is scored. And he's always been able to find it. And I always find that fascinating because, here in hockey, we just sort of scream the goal scorer's name. And then here's the analyst come in and say, well, here's what happens, Dim. And you go, okay, and back to work. Actually, Jim Houston, another one from on the hockey side. I loved his energy, love his passion.
Great one.
I love the great save. I love all that stuff. So, and he also used a little bit of comedy in his work, and that's sort of what you need too. I mean, you have a 9-2 blowout or an 8-1 blowout, and you're just sort of going, okay, I gotta try to find a way to kill time. I gotta find a way to keep my audience as well.
As a lot of the truly great ones also do multiple sports. And one of the ones I think of is Vin Scully. You think of him with the Dodgers, but he also did the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. And he also did golf. And he also did a very good job with the National Football League when he was with CBS in the 70s and 80s as well.
Yeah, Vince Scully was the catch, in the 1982 San Francisco 49ers, right? So, and then also, hey, shout out to Kenny Albert for
Oh,
doing all
yes.
4 sports in at a major league level. He's been the voice of the Stanley Cup. It's kind of funny because he's a top level broadcaster when you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Stanley Cup final, but he's third and fourth on Fox's depth chart when it comes to the NFL. So you're always trying to find what your niche is and whatnot. And I should actually look at Kenny more often as somebody who I should follow. And I think I've told you a few times, Chris, that yeah, you asked me once before, and you may even have this on your mind now of how young broadcasters should get into the sport or get into the business. And my answer was, call as many games as you can, no matter what it is. I've called everything from hockey and basketball at a university level. I started calling ultimate frisbee. I started calling roller derby. I've called lacrosse that ended up literally referees called the game with 10 minutes to go because there was a huge brawl and they didn't want to have to do any more of it. So I've called basically everything. You have to be a well-rounded announcer because anything that you can use, I might even use a phrase like an offensive board, an offensive rebound in hockey when it's a basketball term. So anything that I can figure out that I can use in a game, I'll try it.
And that's what I'm trying to do with this show too. Obviously, I love my sports talk, but I've also branched out and interviewed people from other professions as well. So I try to make my show diverse with guests and subjects in the episodes as well, because I want people out there that sees this, my show or our episode today, saying, "Hey, this guy can talk to anybody on here." And I'm using my former career as a help, because my other career I had to deal with a lot of public and deal with all walks of life and interview people, and I love this. What's the storytelling aspect of it? And I always learn something new from it.
And that's ultimately what you want, Chris, is that as I've happened to lose you here, so
Oh,
now I got you back.
cold
Nope, maybe
difficulties
not.
with the Wi-Fi. Yeah, we're back. We're back. That was on my end. I
All right,
apologize.
all right. I like I said to you off air, I've been having problems with mine, so I'm just a little scared right now.
It happens with technology. It works great, but sometimes things do happen on here.
Of course.
Hey, Jeffrey, what I was going to say as a play-by-play announcer, how important is the storytelling aspect and the preparation? And can you just tell my audience what before you do a broadcast for the Gryphons hockey or basketball teams, what a day's like for you to prepare?
Well, frankly, because my personal life is also very, busy with the CHL stats. I don't really get a day to prepare, so it'll be a set of 2, 3, 4 days to prepare. So for me, I usually have three lines of notes. One is for current stats, career stats, and stats versus the opponent. One stat will be a former team that they played on or teams that they've played on, and something personal that they've done. So whether it be a U Sports All Canadian, or we have one player on the women's Griffin women's team who was an Ontario tumbling champion, and finished eighth, I believe she said, at the Canadian Nationals. We talked about somebody who was the niece of a former Stanley Cup champion, former multiple time Stanley Cup champion as well. Um, all those aspects of storytelling, of telling personal stories, is all part and parcel of trying to sell the sport, and is trying to sell the game as well. So every storytelling is such an underrated aspect because a lot of people think that play by play is done. You show up, you do it, you put the headset on, you call a game, and you go home. And that couldn't be further from the truth. As soon as a game is done, so let's say I've got a Thursday game and Brock's women's are in town, like they are, uh, we have a Friday game, and UQTR, the University of Quebec Acadie, are coming in. I completely forget about what's the game against Brock is, and now I've got to concentrate on all the stories from what's going on in UQTR. And that's, two-time national provincial champion, scored in triple overtime. Well, hey, the last time that happened, Guelph had a scored in triple overtime to win a Queen's Cup. Um, you know, how many QMGHL players are on that team? Um, there's all sorts of ways you can, Guelph's record in or against Quebec-based opponents since the OUA and RSCQ have gotten together to essentially join leagues. The Queen's Cup, the championship game, must be played in Ontario because of it now. There's always these sorts of things that you can try to come up with. Hey, these two were former teammates. These three were former teammates. Um, and anything you can do to make your broadcast better, more enjoyable for the fans. Bring them something that they don't know. It's the internet. You can basically look anything up that you want, and until you can say, I mean, we had two players on Ontario Tech on the men's team, and we're going to have a couple more when UQTR comes into town. I've checked their roster that won the President Cup at the time, now the Gilles Courtois Trophy, or Courtois Trophy from the QMJHL. But that team won 29 games that year in the COVID season. The team that they beat in the semifinals, Charlottetown, won 35. So Victoriaville played 29, Charlottetown won 35, and yet they ended up winning the entire tournament at the end of it on a double overtime goal against the second best team, who also won over 30 games. So all those stories that you can tell, and getting to know the players as well, and
Oh yes.
you can tell those stories as well. I've sort of intentionally stayed away from mentioning that Jessica Coolius' father is Steve. I haven't mentioned that on air yet, just simply because I don't want to take it away from her. Um, you know, I've mentioned Sydney Miller, her father Steve, also was her linesman in the NHL, and along with Scott Driscoll. And the combination thing there is that Driscoll had a famous incident a couple of years ago with a gentleman named Dan Carcillo in the 2014 Eastern Conference playoffs between Pittsburgh and New York, and Carcillo went insane, had a bad case of temporary insanity, abused Scott Driscoll, and his fellow linesman that day was Steve Miller, Sydney's father. So all those stories that sort of intertwine, and that, something that somebody will tune in, and let's face it, we're not getting the greatest, not a lot of people are tuning in, but uh, you know, and that's another thing too. I'll come back to it for a second. Is that for me as a broadcaster, I'm almost looking at it as the other team. So whoever the visitor is, I'm sort of watching it from their perspective, not from Guelph's perspective as the home team broadcaster.
I wanted to bring this up with you as well. I know it's kind of off topic, but credibility is so huge, even for what I'm
Mhm.
doing, what you're doing. And you saw this the other day on Twitter or slash X, where somebody made these reports about Tane was signing with the Blue Jays, coming to Toronto. You had people at the airports, at these restaurants, and I think it was one of the Major League Baseball networks reporter, John Morrissey, that made a boo boo there too. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about is how important is it to be credible as a broadcaster or in media, radio, TV, etc.
It can get you blackballed pretty quick if you come up with untruths. I won't necessarily call them lies, but I'll call them untruths. Or alternative facts, as as it's been coined nowadays. People have to know. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to build relationships. Again, people will put anything on the internet out that they can to try to get themselves as much um, notoriety as they can get. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes it doesn't work that way. A lot of people work their way up from the bottom, trying to build sources, trying to build rapport with as many people as they possibly can, and it's a little bit frustrating to see, you know, yes, I believe that Morosi report was erroneous. Um, you know, but he's also broken so many other trades, and is so very well versed in the game that you can sort of, you know, I know here in Canada and in Ontario especially, we're an hour west, essentially as the crow flies of Toronto. That you know, it wasn't very, Toronto Blue Jays fans did not take that news of Shohei Ohtani signing with the Dodgers and eventually not ending up in Toronto at all very well. But, you also have to be weary of, hey, he's also broken a lot of deals or mentioned a lot of deals that have happened for Blue Jays fans. And, so there's always that give and take, the double-edged sword sort of, and that's also part of the problem of being a top insider. I quite frankly, I don't like the so-called insider anyways, just simply because um I think you're ruining a lot of people's personal lives when you ask too many questions. But to each his own. Somebody will love the insiders and only listen to them. Me, I'm the furthest from it.
One thing I've learned, Jeffrey, even if I make a mistake with information on my show, which I try not to, or on my social media, if I make something wrong or it's incorrect, I always like to apologize or say this was a correction and be
Mhm.
accountable. And that's the way I look at it. Everybody's human, everybody makes mistakes, but when you do, be accountable and learn from them and move on from them.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, I made a huge boo boo in a broadcast earlier in the year where I got a rule interpretation wrong. I got thinking of another rule, goaltenders changing on the fly. So an on the fly change is a legal line change in hockey during play. And I got it wrong with an OHL rule that you cannot change in the NHL as well during regular season overtime, because if you do, and if you pull your goaltender essentially for an extra attacker and you lose, you actually lose that extra point that you've gained in the during regulation. So to have it happen during the third period of play, um, and so the next game, literally the game after, that just happened 2 hours later after that, because we have to call some doubleheaders sometimes. I mentioned, hey, in a previous broadcast, and a couple hours ago, I mentioned this rule. We looked it up. Apparently, it can happen, and hey, congratulations or thanks to the referees for not blowing play down, because that would have assured me that that rule was in process, or that was the proper application of the rule. And then once Guelph women's team played again, I said it again, and I said, "Listen, I'm sorry, I got the rule wrong. I fully apologize for the error, and I hope that and I even apologize to Scott Driscoll and saying, like, this is not what I would like to know the rules. I pretend that I know all the rules, and I work with officials in my OHL role. And so, for something to come up like that, and I don't even see that rule in the OUA or the OHL rule book. I'll be honest with you, I can't find it. I think it's under line changes, but you gotta admit when you're wrong. Sometimes you just have to admit when you're wrong. When you're wrong, you're wrong.
People have more respect for you than to you as well. Hey, I want to also talk to you about this as well. How important is getting people's names right? I know with my show, if I'm not sure about a guest, I will talk to them or I will go on a website and try to get their names pronounced properly. So for a broadcast, how important is it to get their names right? And do you talk to the coaches and players before a game to make sure you get that right?
Always talk to the coaches. I mean, that way because they have more information than what the players do. I honestly try to stay away from players during warm-ups, because I don't think that's fair to them to stop a warm up, a dynamic warm up, uh, because in case that person gets hurt or doesn't have enough time to work on their equipment or whatever it is. I don't have the chance to do something like this and sit down with a player before a game. I would prefer to do
Okay.
that, um, or a couple days ahead of a game. I would prefer to do that. So, but it's sort of the most important thing we can do as broadcasters is to get names right, because it's not just the name of the player playing in the game. It's also a family lineage of players, of people helping that player to get to that spot. So if you happen to say a name incorrectly, or um, you know, eh, as long as you're sort of close to it, we've had, a couple of real tongue twisters. Emma Michalika of Queens a couple years ago or last year. Um, uh, Ashley and Taylor De La Haye from the University of Toronto this year. If you happen to say De La Haye, I think you can get away with it, but you try to be as much corrective, or as much more correct as possible. So usually, I have a roster in my hand. I'll ask the coaches once I finished off all of learn what I've had to do with the questions. General thoughts on the game, general thoughts on the season, what's your game plan, etc. I'll always ask, and I'll always ask. First of all, since we now sort of have to do it, is any player on your team that goes by non-gender binary pronouns? And I'll run down the roster. I'll audibly say their name. I will, and then they can correct me as we go along. And I'll write down any changes in whatever I feel like or what I hear like being said. So that way, when I go to the broadcast booth, I can go that person's name, that person's name, that person's name.
I've I've been on some other podcast shows and they didn't even get my last name right, which is fine. Things happen. But when I tried to correct them, they didn't seem to ever care. And it's like when people don't take pride in their work, and to me, name pronunciation is very important. I think as soon as somebody doesn't seem to really care about somebody's last name, pronouncing it right, that turns you off from wanting to come back on their show or do an interview with them again.
And it's true too. Listen, both you and I both have confusing surnames, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been called Brandow in my life, and so I go, no, like the actor. There's a there's a pretty famous actor. You may have heard of him. My name is just said the exact same way. Now, I've also, believed that I was a genealogist at one time, in a past life here, whereas I would look up my family history and I would always go, now was it really Brando, or was it actually Brandow? But you go back and you go back to like 1600s and you go, oh, okay, maybe it was Brando, but you know that's what they've told me, and so that's what I'm going with.
Deal. Hey, are you okay for time a little bit more? I know with my
Yeah, go ahead.
shows,
Let's go.
when I first started doing this show, it was called 30 Minutes Live with CDP, and thankfully my guests like talking to me, so I got rid of the 30 minutes. Generally, on average, my shows are about an hour because I seem to have great conversations with my guest, and I love the storytelling aspect of it as well, Geoffrey. This question I wanted to ask you. I've only known you for a little bit, maybe less than 2 years, but I wanted to ask you this. I never got to ask you this in person yet. How did you end up with Gryph Vision as the play-by-play voice of the Gryphons hockey and basketball teams?
So, um, the story is actually really short. Neil White, our friend, asked me on Twitter one day, sent me a direct message asking if I would like to do it. I basically said bleep yes, and they hired me a couple of weeks later. Just sent in our friend Kieran. Just sent in a demo reel or a former game that I did, a GOGHL game, which is a league under the OHL in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. And I had another one here ready at the on another computer. So, and he just said you're hired, and I'm like, okay, I got no problems with that. And then later that year, because there was no basketball broadcaster, he asked me if I would do the basketball broadcasting, and I said I've got no problem with that. I've have I done it before? Yeah, I did it for a couple of years at when I was at Mohawk College. When I first started getting into the business as a secondary institution. So it's been a little bit tough on the body because you're home, you're trying to set up or trying to prepare for the next day's game, whatever it is. I mean, listen, we got a game or we got a day in January where there's a women's hockey game that's going to be called in the afternoon, and then two basketball games, a women's game and a men's game at night. So it's been a little bit hard on the body with both of them, but the, as I said to somebody else, there's nothing that brings me more happiness in the world right now is when I'm able to put on a headset and say, this is, everybody listened to me for a while. Everybody listened to me for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and we'll get along great.
I can tell how passionate you are, Geoffrey. And when you have a passion for something, it's not really considered work.
Oh, and that's what everybody says, as long as, if you love your job, you don't have to work for your life or in your life. And that's always what I've tried to put into it. That's always why I've said, I can't give up on the dream. I can't work at a convenient or not necessarily convenience store, but a big box store and say, hey, I gotta leave early because I gotta prepare for a hockey game. Listen, I would prefer to be paid a little bit more. I think we all would, but and especially with this time of the world that we live in, you know, um, it's funny. My cousin came in, watched or listened to me because he doesn't like sports or doesn't watch a lot of sports, and so he goes, you should be getting $80 an hour for this, and I'm like, well, the university won't pay that, but that's kind of what the plan is if I get an actual job, I can ask for $80 an hour.
Well, hey, and I've got my foot in the door. I'm on a radio station in Georgia. It's not a big station, but I'm on 5 nights a week for 1 hour a night, and that's how you get your door. You get your foot in the door, and when you start a new career, I've only started this for 4 years, Geoffrey. You have to make some sacrifices and pay your dues, and eventually somebody out there will notice your work and give you an opportunity.
Well, and every time I try to promote a broadcast, be it men's hockey, men's basketball, women's basketball, is that I always say, if you get a chance, please come and join me, because I don't know who's gonna. Literally 30 people could be watching, but it's always that one person that you get the chance to talk to or get the chance to tune in. Hey,
I think Jeffrey just froze up there. Everybody, just bear with me. Just a Wi-Fi connection issue. Hopefully, we'll get Jeffrey back on in a minute because I'm enjoying having a good conversation with Geoffrey Brandow, the play-by-play announcer of the Guelph Gryphons, men's and women's hockey and basketball teams. So, hey, Jeffrey, I'm not sure if you could hear me. Your Wi-Fi froze up. Hopefully, we can get Jeffrey back on here because we're going to wrap things up in about 10 minutes or so. And Jeffrey's just telling us about his career as a play-by-play announcer and how he got into the University of Guelph, covering the hockey and men's basketball team as well. While we're waiting for Jeffrey, we do have some Monday Night Football. Jeffrey's going to hopefully come back on. It's just a Wi-Fi connection issue with him. We have Monday Night Football on tonight, guys, and we have two games. We've got Green Bay at the Giants at 8:15 p.m. tonight, and Tennessee at Miami at 8:15 p.m. tonight as well. I'm going to go with Packers to beat the Giants, and I'm going to go with those Miami Dolphins to beat the Tennessee Titans. But I wouldn't be shocked if Tennessee upsets Miami as well. Also, the Eagles lost 33-13 to Dallas last night. The Eagles now have lost back-to-back games to San Francisco and Dallas and have been outscored, I think 75, I think 75 to 32. So the Eagles are still first in the NFC East at 10-3, but they're now tied with Dallas 10-3. And the San Francisco 49ers right now, based on their win over the Eagles last week, are now 10-3 and have the number one seed. So the Eagles are now off until next Monday night when they travel to Seattle to take the Seahawks. If the Eagles can win their final four games, they'll win the NFC East no matter what Dallas does. And if the Eagles can win their final four games, San Francisco has a mishap, the Eagles still could get the number one seed. There's a lot of doom and gloom about the Eagles right now, but hey, they're still 10-3. They're still in a playoff spot. They're still in the number one seed in the NFC East. We're tied with Dallas, and they're the number two seed in the NFC right now after San Francisco. So the Niners have some issues on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. And Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff have some work to do, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And offense last night, they couldn't get anything going. And the most disappointing aspect of that loss to Dallas was the 3 turnovers. The opening drive, the Eagles were marching the ball down to the Dallas 20, down 7-0, and Jalen Hurts turned it over at the 20, cost the Eagles between 3 and 7 points, and then Dallas got a field goal off that. And then A.J. Brown in Dallas territory fumbled the ball, stopped them from getting more points, and then Devontae Smith in the fourth quarter as well. So you can't turn the ball over against elite teams like Dallas. They didn't against San Francisco, but 3 turnovers against Dallas, and their inability to score red touchdowns really hurt them last night as well. So yeah, the Eagles got to do something. And their last 3 games, including Buffalo, 34 points against Buffalo. They gave up 42 to the San Francisco and 33 to Dallas. So they've given up 109 points defensively in the last 3 games, averaging 36.3 points a game as well. And it looks like I have Geoffrey back on. And like I said, sometimes things happen with technology.
Yes, unfortunately
Hey,
we
Geoffrey,
have
back.
unfortunately we have a little bit of problems as I mentioned before. So it was going to happen. It was bound to happen, and unfortunately
Yes.
it did happen. So, but
And what I've learned,
thankfully just
Geoffrey, is got to ad lib and the show has to go on. So, like I said, that's one thing I learned when I started this 4 years ago. You can't just end a broadcast because of a technical difficulty. You just have to get through it and keep going on. And I knew you were going to come back at some point.
Yeah, unfortunately it's just a 5-minute break here. So it's again bound to happen. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, where
I got,
was I?
you were just talking about how you got with Gryph Vision and stuff like that.
Yeah. So Neil and Kieran and they were all asking me how I got into it. So or asked me if I would do it. So play-by-play basketball. I worked for Mohawk College, or was at Mohawk College at the time, and uh, taking the television degree. And so I said, "Hey, can I do a broadcast for the basketball?" And they said, "Sure." And I'm like, "Okay." So a couple of games there, and I said I did that for Mohawk to the Gryph Vision guys. So they said, "Hey, come on in." So I was able to get in my foot in the door start of January 2023, and I've been sort of doing it ever since.
Do you remember your first game call and were you a little bit nervous at the time?
First game call. Well, again, I think it depends on what sport. I mean, and what first thing I did. I can't really remember what the first thing I did was. I mean, I've done more things for Rogers than I have for Gryph Vision. The first game I did for Gryph Vision was also the same day as as a um, a football game. So the equipment was a little bit running late to get to me. Um, so I'm like, all right, how do I do this? And so they finally said, well, we'll do this. We'll set this up for you, and then you're free to go. And so about 30 seconds into the broadcast, it's me just sort of like mumbling, and then it's away we go. Uh, was it nerves? Yeah, it was nerves. It was nerves because you didn't know what was going on. You didn't know or didn't have any reassurance of what what could be going on or what's happening, or this is sort of a brand new league. This is a brand new style.
All right, guys. I think we might have an issue again with the Wi-Fi connection with Geoffrey. Hopefully, we get Geoffrey back on again. We're not far from the end of our show, but hopefully, we can get this corrected. I was going to show a video of one of Geoffrey's greatest calls from last year's OUA women's hockey game between the Guelph Gryphons and I think it was the Windsor Lancers. I was the camera operator. Obviously, Geoffrey was the play-by-play announcer, and I was a part of that broadcast as a camera operator. And since we're Geoffrey, yeah, Geoffrey had to hop off again. I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of his work. To me, this is one of his better calls, and I apologize for the Wi-Fi technical difficulties, but it does happen. While we wait for Geoffrey to come back on, I'm going to show you a clip of this call last year, women's hockey, Guelph against Windsor, and it went to 4 overtimes, and I thought Geoffrey did a great job calling this game-winning goal, and yours truly was the camera operator. So just bear with me, and I'm going to play this clip.
Of the quadruple overtime period to go. Tori Verbeek with me. She's got Tate in front. Verbeek, Tate scores! And Tate is ahead, and the game is over.
That clip was courtesy of Gryph Vision, and like I said, I want to say thank. Hi guys, I apologize for that. I when I was showing a video clip of Geoffrey's work of that goal call last year for the Guelph Gryphons women's hockey team, I accidentally hit a wrong button, so I apologize. I'm hoping to get Geoffrey Brandow back on our show. Just technical difficulties with Wi-Fi, and I made a mistake hitting the wrong button as well. So, anyways, guys, I'm going to keep the show going on while we're waiting for Geoffrey to come on as well. I want to say thank you to everyone watching this broadcast live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And later on, it will be on all audio platforms. And speaking of this broadcast, Barry Collins Chevrolet dealership here in Guelph, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycollin.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles. And right now at Barry Collins Chevrolet, you can joy to the ride at Barry Collins Chevrolet right now with a 2024 Equinox. You can lease for $219 bi-weekly, which is like $109 weekly at 8.9% financing for 60 months with $3,345 down payment on an ultra low kilometer as well. And I believe we got Geoffrey back, and I apologize. Geoffrey, you're back. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Again, the internet's starting to go without me here, but yeah. So feel free if you want, we can wrap this up here. And but if you want to go ahead and try a little bit more, we can go a little bit longer here. But I don't know how long this will last. So
Okay. Yeah, if you want to try 5 more minutes, I accidentally, when I showed one of your videos of your game-winning goal caller, I accidentally hit one of the buttons and I ended up booting myself too. But hey, technical difficulties happen and we're back on here. So maybe if you have 5 more minutes, that would be great, Geoffrey.
Excellent.
Right now, well, let's just talk about hockey, the women and men's hockey. Who are some players for people that are watching and listening on this episode to watch out for both the women and men's Griffins hockey team so far this season?
Well, for the Griffins women's team, to me, I think there's a couple key players. I mentioned them before: Hannah Tate, Jamie McGoffin, Tori Verbeek. That top line has been just sensational this year. All of them have over 10 points already this season, and we're just about halfway through. So about 14, 15 games into a 28 game schedule. On the defense, I've fallen in love with Reese Coffey. I think she's going to be a megastar. First year player, 2005 born, first year player, 6 foot tall from Thunder Bay. Played with minor hockey with the Junior Kingston Ice Wolves. I mean, she's just sensational. And then Martina. I mean, we mentioned her before, and Division two silver medalist on a couple of occasions at the World Women's Championships. Everything runs through her. It really does. On the men's side, well, it's sort of a little bit difficult to say. Tanner Wickware has been the team MVP, no problem. The goaltender, no problems, no doubts with saying that. He's held his team in as much as he could. Right now, they ran ice cold coming into the break, losing 8-1, 8-2, 8-1, five, 6 losses at one point during a 6 game road trip, which really, I think, changes their season. They were supposed to be better than what they were coming in. Their record difference between home and road is mind-boggling, gobsmacking. For forwards, Luke Kukavicius, he's been their best player, former OUA athlete of the week a couple weeks ago. But he hurt himself in a game a couple of games ago, so I don't know what his timetable for return is. Nolan DeGursey as well. Anthony's back on the front end. As for the back end, it's their captain Tristan DeYoung. He's been hurt as well. Guelph's going through a lot of major injuries, and it's really calmed down what they wanted to try to do under a new head coach in Josh Dixon. So, I don't think anybody is out long term. I mean, both their backup goaltenders, they were expected to play 3 goaltenders all year. Tanner Wickware is just sort of taken over, and they've had to use their redshirt goaltender as a backup goaltender because their other two, Colton Ince and Hammond play Nova Scotia, Brendan Cregan, just haven't been able to participate yet. Well, Ince hasn't participated, and I think Cregan's been hurt. So, that's who I think have both these teams are you know I think once Guelph gets back home, but they have a really, really tough schedule. The men's team have a really, really tough schedule ahead. I had mentioned UQTR. They've got the Frosty Mug, which is their big homecoming game against Lakehead. They got two in a row against Lakehead. They really only have the one winnable game in my mind, and that's Western. And even then, Western might be playing to spoil the party.
For those people that are watching and listening to our show today, and they're in the Guelph, Kitchener, Cambridge area, why they should come out to an OUA hockey game with the men's and the women's?
Because it's excellent hockey. I mean, for the women's teams, I think it's just to support women's hockey, women's athletics in and of itself. Uh, you won't miss anything. Like these girls play just as hard. These women just play just as hard as what the men would. They're pretty freaking good. As for the men, hey, it's also a lot of the OUA is let's face it, it's part of the reason why they haven't been able to hold on or be as
I think we lost Geoffrey again. So I
No,
apologize.
we're here.
Oh, you're here. Okay. I was just fingers crossed about that. Just
But
wrap it up.
I might go anytime now, I think.
Okay. Hey, well, you know what? The next time I have you come on, we'll talk CHL and the OHL. I'm just going to ask you one more question before we wrap this up. Just quickly, a little bit of thoughts on the 2023-24 Guelph Gryphons women and men's basketball team as well. And I want to give a shout out to one of the Griffin women hockey players. I think, how do you pronounce it? Is it Chai Suzuki or Shy? Okay. I think Geoffrey froze up again. I was just hoping to ask Geoffrey one more question. It's just some technical issues on his end, and hopefully we'll get him we'll wrap this show up. And since we're waiting for Geoffrey, hopefully to finish this up, I just wanted to get his quick thoughts on the Guelph Gryphons men's and women's basketball team. And we do have Geoffrey on again in the future. We're going to do a show on the CHL and the Ontario Hockey League as well. I apologize for the technical difficulties as well. As for some of you guys, this weekend, I will be down at the KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York this Saturday to cover the Buffalo Bandits home opener, championship banner raising night against the Seattle not Seattle, but the San Diego Seals, 7:30 at the KeyBank Center. The Bandits are coming off an opening season loss, 17-13 to Albany. Josh Byrne had a great game, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. Chris Cloutier had 4 goals. Unfortunately, the Bandits didn't have their best defensive game against Albany. Last year, they lost their opener to Albany at home as well. So it's an 18-game schedule. The Bandits, I believe, are still going to be one of the top teams in the National Lacrosse League as well. And I'm looking forward to being at the KeyBank Center this Saturday night, December 16th, 7:30 p.m. You can get tickets at bandits.com, or you can watch the game on CW23 or listen to it on the Bet 1520 AM in Buffalo with play-by-play announcer John Gerkler. And I want to say thank you to the Buffalo Bandits for having me come back this year, doing some freelance media work for the team. And I want to say thank you to Geoffrey Brandow. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get him on one more time. Just some technical issues on his end with his Wi-Fi. But I really appreciate Geoffrey giving us an hour of his time today to come on. And we're going to just try. Okay, he's back on one more time. We're going to just try to finish this up with Geoffrey. And again, thank you everyone for your patience. Geoffrey, thank you for your patience as well.
Oh, hey, thank you for your patience as and the audience as well. Yeah, like I said, there's been a service interruption around these parts. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. The past couple of hours, it's been fantastic, and we just happened to pick a bad time of day. Probably just somebody running over a couple of cables on the road somewhere. So, men's and women's basketball team. Men had a really big win against Laurier on the road. And then they turned it on against Quebec, or excuse me, Queens and Ontario Tech, and they lost by a buzzer beater on the Queens game, and were embarrassed by Ontario Tech. They're still a young team in action. Love watching Dezane Mingo. You can see why he was the OUA All Rookie last year of the year. And on the women's teams, that they're still up there. I think they want to fly under the radar just a little bit, not be as good as what people want them to be. And I think that's okay with them. Renee Armstrong is going to lead them into what should be an excellent year for her. I mean, she had 6 blocks and a half in a game a couple of weeks ago. I'm interested to see what the Egyptian guard Sarah Metwally is going to turn into. National team, played for Egypt on 3 occasions at a FIBA World Cup or a World Championship. I think she's fantastic. She's a little bit small for her size and 5'4", but I'm really excited to see how she's going to fill out and become an OUA player.
And I'm really impressed with the quality of play with the OUA basketball. And hey, Geoffrey, before we wrap this show up, everybody thinks of Canada as hockey. Obviously, it's a hockey nation, but I think the basketball is tremendous. I think baseball's tremendous, and I think this country is getting better at other sports besides hockey.
Well, you just saw it with the women's tennis, right? They won the Billie Jean Cup, the Federations Cup back in the old days when it was before Billie Jean King came around. But the men's tennis won the Davis Cup a couple of years back. Brooke Henderson has been running roughshod around golf courses around the world, multiple major champion. This is also sort of what 2010 was. The own the podium back in Vancouver when Canada won 15 gold medals. They or 14, I think it was. They really tried to put an emphasis on what the future of athletics is supposed to be. Penny Oleksiak, an Olympic gold medalist in the pool. Megan McNeil will probably be a world champion. Kylie Maas is the same. You can sort of go down every sport, and Canadians sort of get underutilized because amateur sports don't really get seen other than like an hour and a half on CBC every weekend. So all these, yes, the NHL is what we know. The NBA, Major League Football, or Major League Soccer, the CFL in and of itself, 9 Canadian teams. But, I think Canada is a little bit underserved in terms of sports community and sports viewing.
Absolutely. Hey, but before we wrap this up, I did show a video clip of that call last year. Now, in your time with Gryph Vision, would that overtime game last year in women's hockey against Windsor go down as your most memorable call so far with Gryph Vision?
Yes, it would. Just simply because eventually you run out of things to say. There's only so many times, we talked about the game immediately after it happened. I told you that I felt a little bit high with talking about the game or getting into the car. A 5.5 hour real time game, a 5 hour real time game. There's also that sort of point where you go, because Guelph also has the longest game ever in collegiate hockey history, a game against Queens for the Macaw Cup, or the game one of the Macaw Cup at that time. Now it's a 1-game final, was a best of 3 back then, where it went 6 overtimes. So there's a little thing where you're pushing and you're going, do I want to make it 6 overtimes? Because that's going to be an even more incredible call. But no, 4 overtimes, and the way it happened too. Hannah Tate taking the puck, or at least Jamie McGoffin's taking the puck from giving it to Verbeek off a bad pinch by the Windsor Lancers, then a 2-on-1, taking it down to Hannah Tate, and then Tate firing it home and doing so blocker side. If you watch the video clip again, because I've seen it 1,000 times, the Windsor goaltender Krishna Swiatashik, Guelph had been going glove all game long, shots from the point and going glove all game long. She wanted to do a little bit of fanciness, a little bit of hot dogging, because you can see her shoulder dip at the last second, just as that shot is coming, because she knows she's going to get down and up that way to take away that glove side. It ended up going blocker, and that's what beat her. And then pandemonium, insanity. As I mentioned, Jessica Coulias' father ran into him downstairs because he's an NHL broadcaster. The first thing he says to me isn't like, great game, how was the game, whatever it was, how was the call? And I said, well, it was okay. I think I got caught between breasts. And he goes, don't worry, CC did too when he called the golden goal. So I'm like, well, looking back on it, is my most memorable? Yes. I'm sure that there's probably been a few others, but it's been pretty fun, pretty interesting. I hope I get to do that with the men's team one day. Unfortunately, either the 2 years thus far with the Gryph Vision or with the Gryphons men haven't been as good as they were with the women. So, but it is what it is. So onward and upward.
That was great to be a part of that broadcast as a camera operator as well. And I love doing the on-air stuff, but people don't realize too, you need your camera operators, you need your audio guys, you need your graphic guys, you need your producers. It's really a broadcast. Doesn't matter if it's with the university or professionally or whatever. You need everyone to do their job, and it was great to be a part of that broadcast. Even though my back was stiff after 7 periods, I was glad to be a part of that broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing too, is that I did the broadcast by myself. I think I can't remember. Actually, the funny thing is that that was the day that our former friend, or not a former friend, but our broadcast colleague and Steve Fitzsimmons, was his last day as a member of the Guelph Storm crew calling Guelph Storm games. And so, I was invited to going to his going away party. Well, his going away party already came and gone by the time that I got out doing my job. So yeah, definitely the most memorable. And you know eh, I replay it all the time saying, do I want to have it back? Should I even said anything? Just let the crowd take it. But eventually I've settled on it is what it is. Can't
Yep.
change it, wouldn't change it.
Nope. Hey, Geoffrey, we're definitely going to wrap this up, but where can my audience follow you on social media? And when is your next broadcast for the Guelph Gryphons? And we'll definitely, hopefully, we'll see you back at the Sleeman Center at some point in the new year as well.
Well, you've had a scroll all season long, or all game long here, with my Twitter account at Geoffrey Brandow. You can follow me there. And as for our next games, we've mentioned them. January 5th, that the York Lions are in town against the Guelph Gryphons, and then January 11th, and then January 12th, January 13th, January 17th, January 18th at the Frosty Mug, January 19th, and January 20th with the 3 games. So it's going to be a busy schedule for us here at Gryph Vision.
And Geoffrey, you have an open invite to come back on my show in the new year, and maybe we can talk just about the Canadian Hockey League and more of the OHL. But just great to have you on today to talk about your career, a little bit about yourself, and about Guelph Gryphons men's and women's hockey and basketball as well. Because I really enjoy being a part of Gryph Vision as a camera operator, and getting to hear your calls too as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. I greatly appreciate the time. And again, it's a date. It's just we just have to try to figure out what days, and hopefully that Guelph Gryphons, they do really well. We may even be able to set up a Macaw Cup provincial championship matchup between the Gryphons and maybe a Nipissing Lakers squad, or Toronto Varsity Blues, or Laurier Golden Hawks, and I think that's going to be pretty cool to do.
Okay. Well, hey, Geoffrey, I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and we'll definitely see you back at the rink or the basketball court in January at Gryph Vision as well.
Hey, Chris, same with you, same with your family. Best of luck and best of wishes in this holiday season.
Have a great day, Geoffrey, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Talk soon.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed season 7, episode 13, overall 343 of Live with CDP Sports Talk. Today was my guest, Geoffrey Brandow. His first appearance. I've known him for about a year and a half. He does play-by-play announcing for Gryph Vision at the University of Guelph for the men's and women's hockey team and basketball team. And he's also an unaffiliated CHL stats guy as well. If you want to know anything about the Ontario Hockey League or the Canadian Hockey League here as well, Geoffrey is your man as well. Next, Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership here in Guelph, is going to be Wednesday, December 13th at 7:30 p.m. My special guest is Greg Eno. He is a writer, editor, sports historian, and he's also the co-host of the Knee Jerks podcast out of Detroit. And Greg's going to come on and talk about the Detroit Pistons. Greg has been covering and following the Detroit Pistons for 53 years, and he's going to talk. It's going to be a Detroit Pistons podcast show with Greg this Wednesday at 7:30. The Pistons are off to their worst start in their franchise history since moving to Detroit in 1958. They're 2-20. They've lost 19 straight games. The franchise record is 21 straight losses going back from 79 to 80 to 80-81. And right now they're at 19 straight losses. And bringing in Troy Weaver 4 years ago as a GM has not worked. And they brought in Monty Williams, a 6-year, $78 million contract. I knew this team wasn't going to be playoffs this year, but so Greg Eno is going to come on and we're going to talk about the Pistons and what they can do to fix this franchise, which seems to have lost their direction. So I hope you guys can all tune in to Live with CDP Sports Talk Season 7, Episode 14 this Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. with Greg Eno, podcast co-host of the podcast, host of the Knee Jerk podcast out of Detroit, Michigan as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame. It is always on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our radio station's website is wqeefm.radio12345.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And I want to say thank you, everybody, for watching the show live stream today as well. You can also check out my official website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. All my digital content and all my previous radio and podcast shows are on there as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles. And right now, if you buy a set of 4 winter tires at Barry Cullen Chevrolet, you can receive up to $125 in tire rebates depending on the manufacturer. More details at barrycullen.com as well. Yours truly is on TikTok. I am a TikTok content creator. You can follow me there at Live with CDP, and I will be posting more content this week from doing some media work with the National Lacrosse League World Champion Buffalo Bandits this Saturday night in Buffalo at KeyBank Center against the San Diego Seals as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as yours truly, check out StreamYard.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, tuned in, and again at 8 p.m. on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM. Finally, you can email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpame19@gmail.com, or you can text me in the show at 519-820-7188. Comments, question, suggestion, any kind of feedback would be greatly appreciated as well. And I'm looking forward to being at the KeyBank Center again this Saturday night. The Buffalo Bandits will raise their 2023 championship banner prior to their home game against the San Diego Seals. Should be a great game. Yeah, San Diego has a great team. Saturday at 7:30, and the fans can also watch the game on CW23 in Buffalo or on ESPN Plus, or you can listen to the game on 1520 WWKB. The Bet 1520 with John Gerkler. Face-off is scheduled at 7:30. If you've never been to a National Lacrosse League game, check out their website at nll.com or bandits.com. And if you want insider information about the National Lacrosse League, check out my friend on social media, Pat Gregor. He is the analyst for the Halifax Thunderbirds, and he also does the color analyst for the TSN National Lacrosse Game of the Week as well. It's a great sport. It's a combination of hockey and basketball, and I really love it as well. And finally, we have Monday Night Football doubleheader tonight. Green Bay at the Giants at 8:15 and Tennessee at Miami at 8:15. I'm going with the Packers and Dolphins to win. And again, as for the Eagles dropped to 10-3 after their 33-13 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles not making excuses, 3 fumbles, drop passes, 10 penalties for 95 yards, and their offense's inability to get red zone touchdowns dead to mid, and the defense continues to struggle. They're giving up 109 points in the last 3 games, which is 36.3 points per game. And they're just not getting it done with the front four, their linebackers, and their secondaries as well. The Eagles are off until next Monday nights when they take on Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks as well. So right now it's a lot of doom and gloom being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but the Eagles are still first in the NFC East, tied with Dallas 10-3, and they're also still have the second seed in the NFC. San Francisco right now, because of their win over Philly, is number 1 seed right now at 10-3, but it's not time to panic in Philadelphia yet. And hopefully the Eagles will bounce back from the last 2 weeks of adversity and that as well. And also give the credit to the Buffalo Bills. They got a big win in Kansas City yesterday, 20-17. And you know what? I'm disappointed about Patrick Mahomes, great quarterback, future Hall of Famer. We all know, as an Eagles fan or a National Football League fan, the officiating around the league has been poor and inconsistent this year. But the call on Tony being offsides was the right call. And I have so much respect for Patrick Mahomes, but I think in this case, they made the right call, and he should watch that footage again as well. But Kansas City is 8-5. And they've lost 3 games at Arrowhead this year to the Eagles, Lions, and now Bills. But the Chiefs, I think, have 4 games left. I believe the Chiefs are going to finish 12-5, win their division, and be the number 2 seed. So if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fans, I wouldn't panic yet. 8-5, you got 4 games left, and Kansas City is going to be there as well as Baltimore and Miami. So it's the top 3 teams in the AFC are going to be Baltimore, Miami, and Kansas City. But yeah, credit to the Buffalo Bills, who are 7-6, and the Bills have another tough game this Sunday at 4:25 at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park against Dak Prescott and CD Lamb and those Dallas Cowboys. And as much as I hate to say this right now, and I'm going to say this on my show before we end it, as a Philadelphia Eagles lifelong fan, but right now, based on the last 2 weeks, the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys are better football clubs right now than the Eagles, but who says the Eagles can't turn it around in the playoffs as well? But disappointing couple weeks for the Eagles, but credit to San Francisco and Dallas for beating the Eagles and beating them handily in those 2 games as well. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I want to say thank you to my guest, Geoffrey Brandow from the University of Guelph Gryph Vision, play-by-play announcer, for coming on today. And I will have Geoffrey back on in the new year, and we'll talk a little more about the Canadian Hockey League and the Ontario Hockey League as well. And I'll put his Twitter handle on here at Geoffrey Brandow on Twitter/X. It's on the graphics there as well. And if you want to check out the University of Guelph Gryphons athletic teams, check out gryphons.ca as well. And also you can check out the Canadian Hockey League website at chl.ca as well. So again, thank you to Geoffrey Brandow for coming on Live with CDP Sports Talk today. And I want to thank everyone for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk. And I'm looking forward to my next episode, Wednesday night, 7:30 with Greg Eno. And we're going to be talking about the 23-24 Detroit Pistons, who are playing home tonight against the Indiana Pacers at Little Caesars Arena. And fingers crossed the Pistons can end that 19-game losing streak tonight as well. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, great evening. Enjoy the Monday night football games between the Packers and Giants at 8:15 and Tennessee and Miami at 8:15 p.m. as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on WQEE 99.1 FM and sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and we'll see you Wednesday night for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk.